Hey everyone, welcome to the Leader's Edge, your path to personal and leadership growth. I'm your host, Steve Steele, alongside my two special guests today, Rich Ashton and Aaron Mendoza. Today we're going to share some insights and some principles that are going to supercharge your leadership and personal growth. And whether you're a new entrepreneur or a seasoned pro, or even a person who's just starting out, this show is for you. Each episode will offer practical strategies to strengthen your mindset and boost your leadership. Thank you guys so much for being here and for all the support you have. Let's dive in and unlock your true potential. Hey, we got Rich and Aaron here today. My gosh, guys, thank you so much for being here. It's greatly appreciated.
Let me
just share a little bit about to the audience a little about who you are and what's going on here. So I'm going to just read this because Rich, you got a long list here. Rich Ashton began his career in the mid-1970s with legendary real estate developer Trammell Crow. During his time there, he learned invaluable lessons in business strategy, customer service, and employee empowerment, and would shape his professional journey. In 1978, he became a partner and opened up an office for industrial development in Tarrant County, Texas. After a successful tenure in the real estate, Rich left Trammell Crow in 1983 to pursue small business acquisition. Over the years, he started or acquired several businesses across various industries, and in 1998, he purchased nearly a bankrupt HVAC company, which he still owns today. Frustrated by the lack of trained leadership talent in small businesses, he developed a training course to culture leaders within his organization. The program's success allowed him to delegate daily operations to his newly trained leadership team and transition to the role of chairman. Rich is an author of Growing Your Own, detailing the leadership principles from his training course. He frequently appeared as a podcast guest and speaker and leadership trainer. Married to Renee for 44 years, Rich lives in Arlington, Texas. They have raised two grown sons and are proud grandparents to four beautiful grandchildren. He is active at the Gospel City Church and is a member of the Ridgely Country Club in Fort Worth, Texas. Rich, welcome to the show. We're so glad you're here today.
I must have nothing more to say. You covered it all, I think.
I think a lot there. So you've been around for a long time. And we kind of shared a little bit about that. But let me share a little bit about what's going on with Aaron. So Aaron, with 18 years experience as a mobile sales representative across various industries, Aaron Mendoza has honed his skills in connecting with people, building trust, and grasping the core drivers of business success. His journey began with knocking on doors and cold calling, where he learned the art of persuasion and relationship building. Recently, Aaron made a significant shift into hands-on work by launching his own junk removal business. This transition has not only allowed him to delve into the world of practical trades, but also provided him with invaluable insights into building businesses from the ground up. From managing projects in offices and houses to navigating apartments, cleanouts, Aaron is embracing the challenges of his new path, eager to learn and grow with each step. So Aaron, welcome to the show, to the Leader's Edge. We're glad you're here today. That's amazing.
Thank you, Steve.
So what we've got today is a dynamic of a gentleman who's been an entrepreneur for years and years and years, and practically a newer entrepreneur. So we've got that dynamic here. And what we're going to actually feature today a little bit, Rich, is the book that you've written, Growing Your Own. And it's practical strategies for leadership. And when we say growing your own, Rich, tell us a little bit of why you titled the book that way and a little bit what the book is kind of about and what you want to do.
Sure. So it's important to understand that I became an author by accident. I did not sit down and write this book. And it was something that was developed during the training program where I was trying to train a group of tradesmen, basically, people who come out of the field, up into leadership roles where ultimately they could take over the company when I was ready to retire. As a part of that training program, I began writing blogs every 2 weeks to the employees. And I did that because I wanted them to start talking about leadership issues and management issues amongst themselves. It didn't really take off until the general manager said, look, you're going to read these blogs together. And so every 2 weeks, they read the blogs together in their management meetings. And things really began to take off at that point. And they began holding each other accountable for the principles contained in each individual blog. And then I was walking through the company one day and I noticed the white binders on some of the employees' desks. And I asked what the white binders were, and they said, we're printing out your blogs and keeping them on the desktop so that we can refer to the, whatever the latest advice you've given us is. I thought that was pretty
awesome.
nice. I like that.
That's pretty awesome.
Well, we continued that program for 2 years. And to be honest with you, at the end of 2 years, I had written 52 blogs and I was about out of ammunition. I had shared about all I could share and was starting to get repetitive. So one weekend, I read through all the blogs and I said, I like these and I'm going to consolidate, reorganize a little bit, but I'm going to publish a book. And I originally thought I'm going to do this just as a legacy project. I was getting ready to retire and I thought I'd hand them out to employees and friends. My entrepreneurial nature kind of took over and I got excited about marketing the book. So in retirement now, that's what I'm doing. But the book began as blogs, and that's one of the nice things. It's such practical, common sense advice, but it's also not a long book. It's about 130 pages, and the chapters are 2.5 pages on average. So it's very simple for people, particularly those who have not had a lot of leadership training, to go through principle by principle. You can read a chapter today, and you can put some of that. You can put it in application this afternoon.
Yeah, so that was one of the really amazing things I loved about the book was how the chapters are short. Yeah. So when you read it, you're not going to get bogged down into thick chapters of information. Basically, you get to the point pretty quick. Each particular chapter that we have in the book. So the way I understand it is, you began to write blogs. Your general manager said, hey, we're going to take these blogs and we're going to study these things every week. And your guys started getting involved. All of a sudden it took off. And now you develop a book out of it. And you have a training course that goes with it. Is that correct?
That is correct. And where I will go into a company for 3 sessions of 2 hours each over a couple of days. And obviously armed with the book. But it's a good starter for the company. And then I do follow-up coaching with people who take the course. I do follow-up coaching on a monthly basis.
Aaron, I know that I've seen you out there working. I've seen you out with guys, and there's had some challenges. I've seen them. We've talked about them. And how important would a leadership course or would a book like this be to young entrepreneurs who have to deal with?
Well, first, let me say thank you for having me.
Yeah.
I'm excited to actually kind of learn from generations above me so I can implement in my new business. So thank you, Steve. But to answer your question, any sort of leadership knowledge that you can take, especially with working with the blue collar world and guys that are kind of getting their hands dirty, the mentality sometimes can be strong, especially being the younger guy or the new guy on the job. It's sometimes challenging. So where I kind of take a lot of my practices is basically building those relationships on basically leading by example. So books like this, especially with the emphasis on structure like that, is what I'm really, really interested in.
I love it. I love the title, Growing. Honestly, for growing within your own business, because so many businesses, and I've experienced, that's important. They bring in people from all different genres, and they grow some of them, but a lot of them are from different. And I understand the reasons why they do that, but I really like the fact that you're actually building within your own company, growing your own leadership, bringing it in. That's solid. That's really solid. So, when we think about that, and you said you had different personalities out there that were, and they had pretty strong. How important the first chapter of your book, and I loved it because I pointed out the first chapter of your book is called Controlling the Narrative. Rich, how do we control the narrative? How does a young man like Aaron here control the narrative within his business when he's got a strong person?
Well, I've talked to Aaron just enough to know that Aaron's a good communicator, and being a good communicator is the start of being a good leader. People miss the opportunity to be salesmen as entrepreneurs and small business people. I guess people think that selling is a skill that you do when you're in a salesman role, but you kind of forget about it beyond that. You're selling every day. You're selling as a parent. You're selling, if you're borrowing money, you're certainly a salesman at that point. You were a salesman when you courted your wife or husband. It never stops. And the better salesperson you are, the more successful you are. Well, how does that tie to controlling the narrative? It's simple. I'm the best communicator for my message on the planet. And the more I realize that, and the more I make use of that, if it's bad news, if it's good news, it's still best communicated by me because I'm the one that developed the message. And people who don't take advantage of that, if an employee has been let go after months of complaining about this employee, the other employees are always shocked when that employee is finally cut loose. They shouldn't be because they were part of the complaining that went on that led to it.
Right.
But if you pull the employees in a group and say, this is what happened, this is the action we took, we tried to counsel the person, it did not work, and so I wanted you to understand this is what it looks like from my standpoint, and this is where we're going next. That's controlling the narrative. That way, I don't leave things to idle speculation.
Right.
And the fact is, if things are left to idle speculation, they almost always go in the negative direction. So use your sales skills and tell the story that you have to tell. Really important.
Mm-hmm. I know that also we face sometimes in communication different language barriers. And I think we face something like that. I think, Aaron, you had to struggle with that on the job. How did you handle that, Rich? Aaron, tell us a little bit about what your struggle was.
I mean, yeah, it was language barriers as far as like prepping. It was just a paint job. Sometimes getting the laborers to lay down the coating or basically the prep work was a little bit of a challenge because there was a specific way because the customer needed to make sure we had no overspray on the shingles. And then long story short, kind of dragged out the job a little bit. But the biggest challenge I had was definitely the language barrier. But the message again was with technology that we had, we were able to get the job done. Not as efficiently as we wanted to, but those are some of the bigger challenges I had.
How did you? Okay.
Well, I don't think I ever dealt with a language barrier,
Right.
but when someone is not as proficient at understanding your message, sometimes you have to work through somebody else. When I bought the HVAC company, I don't have an HVAC background. I'm not technical. And I learned very quickly.
Right.
I learned very, very quickly that although I felt like I was a good communicator and a good leader, they could like me as a leader. They could like me as a person. They could respect what I had to say. They weren't doing it unless they heard it from someone with a technical background. So I learned to communicate through other people. So I would say in this case, you might have to use what is basically an interpreter to get your message across. But when you're doing that, it makes communication more difficult if you've got to make sure that the intermediary fully understands and can communicate the message.
All right. How big is connection? But talk about connection all the time and connecting with your team, connecting with leaders.
I feel like connection is the foundation of leadership, to be honest with you, that in communication. But connection and communication are very closely aligned. I believe that I make a conscious effort to have a different relationship with everybody in my life, whether they're in business, whether they're family, whether it's just a friend, so that when we communicate, we're going to communicate on something that is interesting to you. And that allows me to go deeper into your life and for you to go deeper into my life. If you're going to be an influencer, the more you understand about your audience and the more that they come to trust you because of the transparency of connection, the more powerful your leadership message is and your influence.
Yeah.
So I think it's basic. I can't imagine running a company without being connected to the employees. If it were a 1,000-person organization, obviously you have a limited ability to do that. In my case, I love the small business world because I could be connected to 100% of the employees.
And piggybacking off of that with Rich, with my background of door-to-door sales, culture and connection is probably the top tier.
that right?
Yeah, when it comes to, again, marketing from residential work to retail work, just in the world of sales, as far as the baseline, when it comes to leadership that really outshines the other, I think it's the one that holds the tempo and lead by example. So again, connection. People like to be connected with their seniority, or feels like they see that their manager or whatever is above them is with.
Okay, so
Okay.
let me ask you a question. What does that look like? I mean, to the young entrepreneur out there who's building a business, maybe he has 3 or 4 employees. He's really working it, a lot of hustle and grind going on. What does connection look like when you practice? What does it look like?
Well, for me, I made it a point to go through the company every day, and everybody, not all of our employees were at the shop every day, but if they were, they had a personal conversation with me. And again, we connected on whatever it was that we were connected on. And they could ask me any question about the business that they wanted to ask. I could ask, if they had let me into their family, I could ask about their family. It was that was one of the most fun things for me to do. And on the other side, I've used the example several times of a lady who came to us in a dispatcher role, and she was an okay employee for the first year. I could not break through her, and nor could anybody else. She was completely closed off, and you don't know in that situation what leads to that. I just decided I'm going to be me, and I'm going to continue to interact with her, but she was not comfortable talking about family. I wasn't going to talk about family. One Monday, she came in and we began to talk, and she told me about an incident that had happened on the football field. Her son played football, and she had disagreed with a call that a referee had made and had been pretty vocal about it. And I had to laugh because I've been in that situation.
Yeah.
And we connected over that day. Not only did it unlock our relationship, it unlocked her relationship with other people. And she's now supervisor.
Really?
But for the first year,
That's awesome.
there was no chance she was ever going to be in a supervisory
Right.
role. In fact, it was questionable when she would, if she could ever fit into our culture.
We have about a couple of minutes here before commercial break. Aaron, what kind of connection?
Practical connections that I had is, again, I would be out there with my team, knocking on doors across the street, and that holds, again, a tempo.
Yeah.
Hold the tempo of accountability. It's one thing I love about the door-to-door space.
A lot of people are afraid to do that.
Yeah, it's one of those things where the one thing that I love about that space, it's very primal to me. There's the idea of to go out and hunt and provide opportunities, honestly, out of thin air. It's something I take pride in. I think it builds confidence, especially with this younger generation. I like to look at door knocking as almost kind of like a rite of passage that can get a lot of those hungry individuals out there to test and trial rejection, persistence, commitment in yourself.
Yeah.
So that's one thing I've been loving about the door-to-door space, just in general. I'll never really kind of go away from it. It'll always be in the back of my pocket.
Wow. We got like 1 minute. Rich, going to give you a quick brief. It's a quick brief. What is vision? We'll come back. What's the vision?
Vision seed is to plant a seed with the people I'm talking to, that they then will interpret it and use it however they can with their people. That's part of that communicating through an intermediary. So I don't give them the words, I give them the idea and let them present the idea.
Awesome. Thanks, Rich. I appreciate it. We're going to come back to that in the next section. For now, we just want to say thanks, guys. This is so much fun. I'm enjoying this. Good answers and good questions. And we'll come back the next segment, and we'll talk about the vision seed. So welcome back to Get Leader's Edge. We'll see you in just a minute.
Are you ready to elevate your organization with a team of transformational leaders? Do you want to attract and nurture top talent while enhancing communication and productivity across generations? Hi, I'm Steve Steele, co-host of The Leader's Edge, and your coach with the Maxwell Leadership Team. My program equips leaders with essential skills and resources to lead, coach, and communicate effectively, ensuring everyone thrives. With tailored insights and proven strategies, I'm here to help your entire organization succeed. So reach out today at growthinleadership@gmail.com or visit johncmaxwellgroup.com/Steve Steele.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Leader's Edge. I'm Steve Steele with my guest host. I'm the host. My guest today with Rich Ashton and Aaron Mendoza. And Aaron, right before we went to commercial break, Rich, we were talking about vision seed. So tell us a little bit about what that is and how you came up with that.
It goes back to talking through an intermediate. So my lesson that I learned early was that technical people didn't want to hear they could hear part of the message. They weren't going to hear the whole message if it came from me. So if I planted an idea with the service manager, for instance, it might be a vision that he wasn't going to come up with on his own. But if I planted the vision, then he could embellish the vision or illustrate the vision with his own story. And so when I talked about planting vision seeds, that's what I was talking about.
Yeah, and that's important because it allows that particular manager or that leader to really put their special touch on it, right?
Exactly.
And they can be able to communicate that. Because it's like I've always said, I've said this 1,000 times, facts tell, stories sell. And if you have a story behind a particular vision that you're trying to get or put out there, and if you can tell a story behind that, people really zone into that. Really, really do. It really makes a difference.
Well, and the story that I might tell to illustrate something would not resonate with a technical employee the way that the service manager would. So that just one of those things you have to learn in leading people.
That makes sense to you, Aaron?
Yeah, and I've experienced that in my, I want to say, past life of being in sales, where the connection, the communication work hand in hand. And what I really implemented when I was managing sales teams, basically having specific milestone that's being picked up on those personal relationships that I built with my team members to grow.
Mm-hmm.
And having that milestone helps me assist them to build their story. They can tell it. So it's just a basic recruiting tool to expand and grow.
Rich, let's go to chapter 4.
Yep.
I love this chapter as well. These are my ones I'm talking about today are one of my favorite chapters.
Yep.
So what I love this one. This was a great chapter. This chapter talks about actually facts beat speculation every single time. Facts beat speculation. Wow. What are you talking about when you say that?
Any organization, business organization, otherwise, unfortunately, seems to thrive on gossip. And I mentioned earlier that in the absence of information, people go negative. The gossip is never positive. The gossip is always negative. And if you allow it, it's a mistake. But if you act on it, it's a critical mistake. So I use in the book, I use a hypothetical locker room as the example. And the football coach hears from his assistant coaches.
Let me just read it real quick.
Okay.
Let me just read it. It's really a great illustration. Let me read this. Coach, I'm hearing a lot of grumbling about the offense, says the defensive line coach. The guys just don't believe we have the right game plan and practices are disorganized. Crazy. Let's see. So then it goes on. 2 of the other assistant coaches agreed that there was a lot of frustration in the locker room as well. But at the end of the meeting, there is a very negative feeling surrounding the coaching staff.
Yeah. So they had a predetermined conclusion that, number one, it wasn't their problem. It was the defensive coach that was criticizing the offense. That wasn't by accident. It's always somebody else's problem. What the coach did was go to the unofficial leaders of the team. And in every organization, whether it's a locker room or business, you look around and you find that there are unofficial leaders. They may not have a title, but it's who the other employees look up to and communicate with. So he called in 3 players that fit that description and said, so what's going on? And he got to the bottom of the problem. So he solved the problem because he didn't rely on the speculation and the gossip that came from his assistant coach.
So, the way I understand it in the book, actually a third
string quarterback who wasn't playing, and he was unhappy, as third string quarterbacks usually are.
Yeah, and so the the gossip started with him.
Correct.
So how does gossip? I mean, it can really destroy an organization. It can really just tear an organization apart. And it's powerful.
It is powerful. And as I said, gossip is never positive. There's never people spreading rumors about people that make them sound better. So I root out gossip. I get to the bottom of the problem. I call people in. But if there's two people involved, I call both of them in. It's no fun for them to have that conversation. They know that they're not going to talk about somebody who's not in the room. And if they've had bad things to say about the person that we called in with them, they better say it in front of me. But 9 times out of 10, gossipers cannot be tolerated in an organization. They'll be cut. I believe in redeeming people when possible. I always give them a chance. But my success rate on redeeming gossip, people who really enjoy gossip, is pretty close to 0.
Yeah. If you're not part of the problem, we're part of the solution. Keep your mouth shut.
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah, it's very contagious. Unfortunately, it's sticky. Gossip is sticky.
Even with guys,
Yeah.
I mean, I
Oh,
shouldn't say that.
Absolutely.
I shouldn't say that. I shouldn't say it that way.
Absolutely. That's. I mean, you're dealing with egos. You're dealing with it could be very very toxic, cancerous, if you will. It could spread. So if you don't nip it in the cut off the snake at the head, is kind of the analogy I use. It could just disrupt vision. Again, it's a chain reaction.
Yeah, it destroys every kind of organization, not just businesses. I've seen it where it's actually I spent 25 years of my life worship pastor in church, and I saw it destroy all kinds of, and it's horrible. Anyway,
Business, families, anything else.
anything.
It never gets better unless you take concrete action.
Well, okay, what is concrete action? Tell me how that looks. Tell us, Rich, how that would be when a new entrepreneur or new leader comes in, that maybe a small business, and he's got an issue with gossip going on. Practically tell us how you handle it.
Well, as I said, call them in. If there's 2 people involved, call both of them in. Let them hash it out in front of you, and they won't. They won't be honest about it. They'll say it was a mistake or whatever. But it doesn't take very long to know who the worst problem is. Maybe both of them. Maybe both of them have to go. But as I said, you give them a chance. I like to believe that employees make choices that can save their jobs, can get them promotions, etc. And so if you clearly outline what their choices are, and if the gossip does not stop, they've made the choice to leave the company. And you have to follow through on it. So I'm really bottom line on that stuff. And when you've done it as long as I have, you realize the patterns of behavior, both good and bad. And when you see a bad pattern, there's no sense fooling around. You got to take action.
Yeah, it could be detrimental to your organization.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to go to my favorite chapter in the book.
Okay.
I love this. I love this title. It's called "Don't Forget Your 2x4."
Yep.
Oh my gosh, that was a wonderful chapter, and you have the story of Cain in it.
Correct.
So I want to hear
Not Cain in the Bible, but a friend of mine named Cain.
Your friend, yeah. Tell us about that and how that story worked out.
So I have a personal trainer that I've worked with for years, and he is despite being a very intimidating guy physically, he's a terrific guy. And as he drove to the back to his gym one day, there was a pickup truck blocking the way, and he politely honked his horn, and the guy jumped out of his truck and began cursing and waving his arms and wanted to fight. Well, all Cain had to do was just step slowly out of his truck. And when the guy saw that he was 6'4" and had tattoos and a bald head and all, he decided that maybe moving his truck was the better option. That Cain didn't ever say, he didn't have to say anything. He didn't have to threaten any action, but he was intimidating enough to where the situation got resolved easily. The point of the chapter is that if people know that you have or suspect that you have a different view, and you can't be pushed past that point before you're going to react, that you have power. I'm not someone who leads from fear, but I think if fear is 5% of your arsenal, That's fine. The idea that people know that you can go off is much more powerful than actually going off in a lane.
Yeah.
And so as long as they see the 2x4, as long as they know it's there, they won't push you.
So basically, are you talking about when you discipline an employee, or are you talking about when you just have that, you have that mindset that you push him too far, it's not going to be pleasant.
That's the point. And this chapter has been misunderstood.
Yeah.
In fact, when I first wrote the blog, it was misunderstood. And they thought that I was talking about fear. I used Cain as an example because he never had to do anything. The guy simply feared him and said this would be a bad decision to push this any further. And that's the point of the chapter, is the threat of something is far more powerful than the
That's
consequences.
interesting. Now, when I read about Cain, he was pretty mild mannered gentleman. He had the look of pretty intimidating, but he was very mild mannered, spoke softly, and he was just a heartfelt kind of guy.
Yeah.
And so just the person seeing them intimidated, that I better not. Is that what kind of
That's exactly it. And it wasn't that he did anything. All he did was get out of his truck. And the guy made the decision, this is not going to go well for me. Well, in leadership, that's what you want people to say. Do I want to push this? Or do I want to see that side of Rich? Or do I not? Nah, probably not.
Yeah. Hey, Aaron, have you being a young leader out there and getting your business getting off the ground here in the last year or so, have you experienced anything like that?
No, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to say like the intimidation factor, but you definitely can feel there's an aura of somebody that's very confident in themselves. I mean, always look at as the physical attribute of that is the easiest to compare to, because it resonates with everything. Typically, if somebody is physically fit of some kind, or mental state, more times often than not is usually aligned for the state finding and pace of things. So, I do believe that fear is not the way to do it. I feel like respect is ultimately earned, and sometimes it could be translated in many ways, from work that's being executed within a business or an organization, or just individually, which resonates. I think it's more of an aura, and that's how I've seen it in my life.
Well, let me just split it up for both of you guys. How does a leader, a young leader, learning these ropes, how does he find a balance? I mean, you got to have somewhat of that, like you said, 5% fear there. Is it just because it is idle, or is it because of who he is, or how does a young leader find that balance? Have an idea?
I'm not sure on the young leader. I'm not sure at what point. Well, I actually started as a much more authoritarian leader than I developed into later on. I used fear too much. I knew that I could intimidate people verbally. And once I learned that wasn't my strongest suit, I backed off of that. I've heard people say, I've never seen Rich mad. Well, Rich has been mad. And it's really powerful if someone else who hears that comment says, oh, I've seen him mad. You don't want to go there.
Yeah.
There are times when you're pushed, you have no choice but to show them the 2x4. But when it's used carefully, it's just far more powerful. We all know people who fly off the handle regularly.
Right.
They lose all of their intimidation factor by doing it.
Right.
Or if you're always threatening, but you never follow through, that's totally ineffective.
Yeah.
But if you, as Aaron said, if you carry yourself with an aura that earns respect, you rarely have to go all the way to anger.
So piggyback, I think, and to build that aura, I think it's a self-confidence thing. So when you're holding yourself as a young leader, if I were to point it out, it's when you say you're going to do something, you do it, which I think builds confidence within yourself, which naturally it will be a byproduct of that aura. When you say you're going to do it, hold yourself accountable. And I think it will just naturally build.
Well, I know that for me, when I corporate leadership, I spent a lot of years I had 5 different managers that I was responsible for, the direct reports, about 50 employees, them. And I know that I was more of an empathetic. I was the one who would listen. I struggled, to be honest with you, putting fear in, because I didn't want that to be my who I am. I can be intimidating as well, because I'm a pretty big guy, but I don't really didn't like the way that came across. So I was on the other side, Rich, where I think I was too empathetic. How much do you know? How does a leader know how much to apply fear or whatever? How do you know how much to apply?
I would say it goes back to having a relationship with the people that you're leading.
Okay,
so
talk to me about that.
Every single person has a different tolerance for that, and everyone is motivated a little bit differently. So if I know you, and I know that I can use humor effectively with you, or if I tell a story,
okay,
a leader is always varying his message if he's going to be effective. And it in a small organization, you can vary it person to person. And I've never really had a problem with going too far or not going far enough with that. And maybe it's feel. I've done it for so long that I guess I should be reasonably good by this time. So I don't find that to be a real problem. But I have seen people who were way too empathetic and listen far too much. I'll listen, but when we start getting into silly territories, I shut it off real fast.
Yeah, I can piggyback at that, going to even just our connection. It also comes down to individually. Some people receive either feedback or criticism differently. And I come from again, door knocking world of there needs to be empathy. It's a mentally difficult job. But there also needs to be like execution and accountability, and some delivery needs to be softer, and some people can accept a little bit more harsher. Get up, say your name 3 times, look in the mirror. Let's get to work. But
basically what you guys are telling me then is this: as a leader, I need to know every person on my team. I need to know them well.
I think it's important, because ultimately, like where I've seen the greatest leadership, and I've seen the biggest result in my experience with running smaller teams. The empathy is really important, but ultimately it's a love for what you're building, your message, your organization. So I think one of the bigger messages in leadership is understanding like love is, and loving what you do, there is parameters, there are boundaries, there are rules and expectations, just like anything else, just like in a family, just like what you're trying to build. So I think empathy is very important, but also structure and standard are very, very important.
Yeah, that's powerful. I mean, and for me to, I can think back to times when I felt I was sympathetic, and I can see where I maybe lost some traction. Then there were times when I look back early when I was younger, and I used more intimidation or fear, I lost traction. So there's a balance there, and it takes time to get that balance, right? I mean, it takes time to get to a point where you as a leader understand your people, know how to talk to each particular one, because every person is individual, and you have to reach that message with them, right? And so it's important that as leaders, we understand who our people are and what their particular need is, and a little bit about their makeup, and what, Rich said earlier, sometimes humor is the way you approach it. And other times it's straight talk. And for me, as a person who's leading me, it's straight talk. I need to know exactly straight talk, and then I can make corrections in the behavior, or I can make corrections in the scope of it. All right?
Yeah, I made a major mid-course correction in my 40s when I saw that my style was not working as well as I thought it should, and it wasn't working as well as my friends were.
I want to get into that.
Yeah.
We're going to go to commercial break
Okay.
right now, but I want to get into that. I want to hear that. I want to hear a little bit about what you're talking about, because that's powerful. So we'll be right back to the Leader's Edge. Just a minute, we'll have Rich back and Aaron.
Are you ready to elevate your organization with a team of transformational leaders? Do you want to attract and nurture top talent while enhancing communication and productivity across generations? Hi, I'm Steve Steele, co-host of The Leader's Edge, and your coach with the Maxwell Leadership Team. My program equips leaders with essential skills and resources to lead, coach, and communicate effectively. ensuring everyone thrives. With tailored insights and proven strategies, I'm here to help your entire organization succeed. So reach out today at growthinleadership@gmail.com or visit johncmaxwellgroup.com/Steve Steele.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Leader's Edge. I am Steve Steele, your host, and I have today my two guests with me, Rich Ashton and Aaron Mendoza. And we've been talking a lot about leadership in small businesses and how the leaders lead their people. We talked a little bit before we got right before we ended the last segment, Rich, you were going to tell us a story a little bit. Tell us what that's about.
Well, I was talking about a mid-course correction I had in my 40s when my career just frankly stagnated. And
when you say that stagnated, what does that mean? Because I'm sure there's guys out there right now that feel the very, very same way. Hey, I'm at a point where I'm numb. I don't know where it's going to go. I don't know how things are happening.
I had started really quickly, and being with the Trammell Crow organization was a phenomenal start. And they were, just being attached to them, I had a level of prestige and accomplishment that was kind of surprising to me. I said earlier that I had this authoritarian style that I inherited from my dad. And as I looked around, people now were starting to pass me, and their trajectory was different than mine. And I got fairly close to a major failure. Kind of looked over the precipice, didn't really fall into the chasm, but I was awfully close. And I just said, I gotta start doing something different. It took me about 5 years, frankly, to determine that I was the problem and I was going to have to make some corrections. I reconnected with my Christian faith around the age of 50. I started paying more attention to how others were handling situations instead of thinking I had all the answers. I fortunately am married to a phenomenal relationship builder. And instead of saying, gosh, I wish Renee would be more like me, I began to say, Renee's got this relationship thing down and I don't. And so I began to learn from her, but entrepreneurs tend to run in groups, and I have a number of entrepreneurial friends, and many of whom have been very, very successful. And I would pick something from this one and something different from this one. But the role of those mentors, who all were unofficial mentors, the role of those people in my life has been staggering. I can't tell you how important that has been and continues to be. So I was able to kind of restart my career, but doing it based on relationships. And now I have lots of long-term relationships that are great, both for business and for my personal.
Beautiful. Aaron, how important is
Incredibly. I'm always looking. I'm always saying that I kind of say to myself, I'm here to learn to earn. So I've always kind of been a student of whatever opportunity I can. So mentors are important because typically they go through paths that they struggle with, and I just try to absorb it as much as possible. So hopefully one day be that for a rising generation.
Absolutely. And I've had some great mentors in my life as well. It's huge to have a person go to talk about situations. And you're not necessarily looking for answers, but you're looking for just how they handle it, what that looks like, And that's what mentors do. They don't necessarily tell you all the answers, but they tell you, you know what, they guide you through the process of difficult situations. And sometimes just to sit down and just talk and not really even talk about business, but knowing that you have the camaraderie of that person.
And falling back into that, finding a mentor also can be sometimes a challenge to just be a little bit patient with, finding the right mentor outside of maybe, I come from the sales world. So some of my mentors were looking for things, material things. And then maybe you find out that wasn't it, but you can still take what you learned. Maybe it's from business or mindset or persistent mindset, and translate it. So having multiple mentors and multiple pillars and categories in your life is just as important as having the one.
Yeah.
And also just being able and willing to do that.
What do you recommend? Not just to look up both guys. How do you recommend a person?
I'll give you the answer while Aaron thinks about it,
Okay.
because it's easy. There's something about having written a book that makes people feel more comfortable asking me questions about things. I'm an old guy.
Yeah.
If you think I don't like being asked questions and have people say, gosh, you've got a lot of wisdom, which just is a euphemism for being old.
Yeah, I understand that.
Rich
I get it.
would, I had breakfast with a young man this morning who's a grandson of a friend of mine. And he just wanted to sit and talk a little bit. There is nothing more flattering to an old guy
Yeah,
than to being asked about that.
I agree.
And so I'd say that's how you find mentors, to be honest with you.
Just go find. Some
Maybe not every old guy, but people who have had some success, go ask them about it.
Yeah.
People love talking about their success.
People love talking about their stories. And
Yeah, absolutely.
take
I
some
know-
pride in that too.
I know there's a couple of guys out there that I know that you know Nathan Davis, and Nathan I know he's a mentor to a lot of different people, and he is I know powerful at that, and a lot of guys that really you get mentoring from David.
Yeah, every day.
Do you?
Every day, yeah. Shout out to the industry commercials and Nathan. So he has his hands on a lot of people. He does a lot for me and individuals as well in the Fort Worth area. So I mean, seeing what he has and what he's accomplished, and where he's going in his vision is something that you want to, because it's a rising tide.
Absolutely.
So
I'm gonna give him a shout out too, because he was a big component in helping us get the location, things that we're doing here as far as edge and framework that take, because we've never been in studio before. This is the first time for me, so this is all brand new, and it's kind of fun. I'm enjoying it, but it is a new thing. But yeah, I know that Nathan's been even a mentor to me, because of the different things that I've learned from him, where we're going. It's amazing. It really is. Mentors are very, very important in life, and I recommend every young leader, older leader, whoever it is, find a mentor. I've even known some older gentlemen that have even young men they've gone as mentors. And right?
yeah. And I've actually seen that with the transition of like technology. Sometimes it does.
Yeah, that's
Sometimes there's some transitions where like
Yeah,
wisdom
that's
extra.
you're over there.
Sometimes there's
you're laughing,
wisdom.
but I know what you're
Are
saying.
you talking about me?
No. I mean, sometimes like, I'm still sometimes even learning about some of the newer changes in technology. I'm still trying to build a business myself, and it's like a generation below that seems to know a little bit more of algorithms and things that I just like. I'm getting caught up, so I can only imagine 2-3 generations above me having that same. So, I think that where it goes into like the pride adjustment of figuring things out. I've had mentors that have seen the changes of things happen with businesses they ran. So I've quite a bit of mentors in my life that I still talk to and respect to this day, from the water industry, from law firms, that have executed multiple verticals that have, again, all kind of said in a sense, and I've seen them do kind of the same thing where like they built this path and they're successful. But with the change of like technology and AI and how marketing and buying patterns are changing, sometimes you'll be surprised. You're meant to, or in a sense, could be a 22-year-old kid that just knows
it's technology.
it's actually a technology. So sometimes, and I even have to sometimes kind of like swallow the pride of it of being like, okay, sometimes I do need help running this marketing campaign that I just don't. So again, sometimes like fitting your role in a small business and not trying to wear all the hats. Sometimes you have to like, dang it, I don't know the answer to this one, so I gotta ask this.
I get it. I struggle with the technology piece of it myself.
Yeah, it's just
especially with the radio show and the podcast. It just a lot of technology out there. I don't know how to get it all done. I need younger support.
To just know it and to know the lingo,
Yeah.
the talk and everything. It's a different language for sure.
But we got a few minutes left here on the show, and one more chapter I want to cover.
Okay.
This is, I think it's apropos for where we're at. So the chapter 15 says it starts and ends, and I'm assuming you
Is the leader, and that's an accountability chapter.
Okay.
There's not a better book on leadership out there than Extreme Ownership by two Navy SEAls, and
that's
Jocko Willink and Leif Babin.
Babin.
And they talk about accountability in an entirely different way than most of us in business think about accountability.
Yeah.
They
Life and death.
they weren't dealing with the profits and losses and balance
Mhm.
sheets. If they screwed up, people were going to lose their life. And that was the very first chapter, was talking about an operation that went badly. And no Americans were killed, but some of the Iraqi soldiers who were working with them were killed. And Jocko was ready to resign his commission at that point, and offered that to his bosses. Well, that's accountability. And in business, if you start the day saying, it's up to me, and everything in this organization is up to me. If in my business, if a service call went badly, I didn't run the service call, but I was responsible for being involved in hiring, training, and equipping the employee who ran a bad service call. That's my responsibility, just as it was his and his boss's. That level of accountability is so powerful in business or any organization that it begins and ends with you, with the leader.
Wow.
Yeah, just piggyback off that, a quote that really stuck with me when I was kind of developing my roles of leadership is a good leader takes more than half the blame and then less than half the credit.
Yeah.
And that's something that you kind of have to like hold to your heart, and it's hard. It's hard. It's hard taking the hit for someone's either whatever you can label it as, maybe it's a mistake, misunderstanding, whatever that may be, but ultimately there is a sense of peace knowing, and there's a mindset thing, there's a sense of peace knowing that like everything when it comes down to it is your fault, but having the ability and the open mind to either correct or realign, or again, maybe a great coaching opportunity.
Absolutely. Rich, when you had a situation happen, let's get practical. When you had a situation happen, maybe the fault of the employee, and maybe it cost the company some money, or it cost extra work or labor or whatever, because those don't figure in on the bid so much when mistakes are made, right? How do you handle that? Maybe pretty good size of loss. I mean, how does a young leader, how do they handle it?
Well, the money was never going to be the determinant for us. You're going to do the right thing in that situation, and kind of total up the losses later on. But the first thing is to take care of the customer and to make sure that you make it right with the customer. The second thing is to find out what went wrong, talk to the employee, see if you can't stop that from happening again. One of Jocko's comments in Extreme Ownership was, that will never happen again. So that's a level of commitment again to making things right. It's very different. That will never happen again. Most people just go, well, stuff happens. Mistakes happen. You can't tolerate that. And then the last thing is to figure out how you're going to dig yourself out of the financial hole that was created by that. Hopefully it's not very deep. But in my opinion, money can never be the starting point on that conversation.
So let's say the situation happened, right? Flip the switch.
Okay.
And situation took place, took care of the customer, everything, made some losses. Then on the backside,
well, I just think it's really easy. I think you listen, number one. I mean, the employee knows at that point that a mistake was made. Now, if they're going to argue that it wasn't really a mistake, it was just something happened, you got a problem on your hands. But most of the time, if you have good employees, they're going to say, I thought you were going to fire me. Are we just talking about this?
Mm-hmm.
So why would that not happen again? What changes are you making tomorrow when you go out there that will keep that from happening? Mm-hmm. If the answers are good, counseling session is over. If they don't know something and that's why they made the mistake, that's on you. And they need some more training, and you can deal with it with that. But unless the employee is just belligerent and defiant about the mistake and claiming that it wasn't a mistake, you've got a salvageable situation.
Yeah. It's the oil and water analogy. You can't really, if you have somebody that's constantly going to be basically the excuse of why it's not their fault, lack of accountability, that's a different problem to have. But in my upbringing into it is actually perspective. Is actually, at least for me, and I was able to practice that with other reps that I was training. But the power of perspective of, okay, like nothing, we're gonna learn from this, and then just being educated on like the aftermath of what this maybe cost the company or organization, And then again, just realigning how to resolve the problem to, again, let's make sure this never happens again. And then the conversation, if it does, is totally different, you know?
Well, that's huge. So
Mhm.
the hardest person to lead in the whole situation, leading the company, hardest person to lead, and making sure you lead yourself to a place where you know you're going to hold people accountable. You're going to be able to lead in the right way. Those are really, it's a difficult places to be sometimes. Learning,
Mhm.
right? Leading yourself, making sure that yourself is one that's accountable. You got to be accountable. That's huge. I just, know that leadership is really one thing. I think John Maxwell says it best. Leadership is in nothing more, nothing less, and it's influence on people that you have on community that you have, and job, the customer, all of that, all takes into account and influence. That influence, connection, 2x4, all of that stuff is there, and it's a really big part of leadership. This leadership thing is an art, it really is. It's something you practice every single day, something you really try to really want to get it right. The biggest thing, though, and I want to ask you guys, if you could leave today, leave our audience with one major thing, something that would really be a radical shift in their leadership, what would you say then, Rich?
Mine would be begin to acquire knowledge
Okay.
today and tomorrow and for the rest of your life. That advice was given to me at age 24, and thank goodness it was, because I was not a reader at that point in my life. I am an avid reader now, and with audiobooks and podcasts, it's pretty easy to listen to things and get them into the hard heads like me. That's just been gigantic in my life. And I read on a variety of subjects so that I have a breadth of knowledge. I've been doing it for over 50 years. I've got a lot of knowledge that we used to have. Thank goodness.
That's Aaron, what did that say?
Same thing. Kind of backing what I said earlier is always be willing to ask questions. Always trying to stretch yourself out in the sense of asking anybody you can. Always be willing to learn to earn. So that never goes away. I always encourage people to constantly ask questions, to never feel, I guess, dubbed down for asking any question. No question is ridiculous when it stays in the category of what we're talking about.
And there's really no excuse.
Not any.
I mean, you can plug and play right in your car. When you're out and running around, or you're got ear pods in your ear when you work. There's no reason why you can't get kind of education. Really make connection with people. And I love to read too. Reading has been, I've always taught when I was young. Really, I'll tell you what it makes. Everybody out there, I would just say, hey, get a good book, get a good mentor, listen to a great podcast. Those things are amazing. It will change your life. And I want to say thanks, guys, for being here today. Just so much. Appreciate it. Rich, I know you came clear from Arlington.
God,
But you have an office just right around the corner here, don't you?
I do.
Yeah, and that was
yeah.
kind of cool. I didn't know that, but that was awesome. And I'm just glad that you were here. Thank you so much for blessing us today and imparting. And I think you and I are talking about maybe doing a series this next summer, and maybe doing like a 4-part series. We could come in and just take some of your strategies and just do a series on it. So
Can't wait.
we'll flesh that out some more. Aaron, thank you, brother, for being here. I get to see you often. Thank you so much for being here today. And you're going to be back next week with Nathan David. He's going to be here.
Awesome.
We're going to be talking about the Blueprint Social and how all that's coming together and what we're doing as a team and working together as a team. But if you haven't got this book, guys, you need to get that book, Grow Your Own, by Rich Ashton. Common sense advice for developing leaders in the small business. Go out, get on Amazon.
GrowingYourOwn.net.
GrowingYourOwn.net. Get it there. So thank you so much for being on the Leaders Edge today, guys. I appreciate everyone listening, and we'll tune in and see us again next week, same time on Leaders Edge. Thank you.